The Ukrainian delegation for dialogue with Russia declared that the first bilateral contacts have started in Belarus. On Sunday, the northeastern city of Brisbane was hit by a severe storm in Australia, accompanied by flash floods that have left 7 people dead so far. Thousands of Shiites from across Iraq gathered in Baghdad, the capital of the country, on Saturday to mark the death of the 8th century Imam Musa al-Qadim. Hi, this is from the South. I'm your news anchor, Dio Martin, from the TeleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. The Ukrainian delegation for dialogue with Russia declared that the first bilateral contacts have started in Belarus. The meeting takes place on the border between Ukraine and Belarus, as announced by the Russian side hours earlier. The president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, stated that he had a phone contact with his Belarusian counterpart Alexander Lukashenko on Sunday, in which the leader committed himself to keeping all the country's military planes and helicopters on the ground during the course of the talks, and to ensure the security of the Ukrainian delegation during the talks and their return. Zelensky declared earlier that no preconditions have been imposed, and although he does not believe that the talks with Moscow will be successful, he takes them as an obligation for the sake of peace. Russian presidential assistant Vladimir Madinsky stressed that the sooner the talks begin, the better for the lives of Ukrainians and soldiers on the front line.
We have been working in detail. We talked to the delegation and they agree with the route of the Ukrainian delegation, and everything is absolutely safe since very early in the morning. We have been in Belarus since early in the morning. It takes us about 3 hours to get there, which will be the time of arrival of the Ukrainian delegation from Kiev. For us, every hour, every minute is very important. The sooner the talks start, the better for the lives of our Ukrainian brothers and the soldiers who are in the front line.
Meanwhile, the Russian armed forces have disabled 975 military targets in Ukraine since the beginning of the special operation. Among them, there were 23 command posts and communication centers of the Ukrainian armed forces, 3 action points from the 301st Air Defense Complex, and 48 radio stations. The Russian military reported also the shooting down of 8 combat aircrafts and helicopters, 11 unmanned aerial vehicles, and 2 point-to-point tactical missiles. 223 tanks and other armored combat vehicles were destroyed, along with 39 multiple launch rocket systems and 86 field artillery guns and mortars. The Russian Defense Ministry assured that the attacks don't target Ukrainian cities, nor do they endanger the civilian population. The European Union announced that Europe's airspace is effectively closed to any Russian-owned or registered aircraft, be it public or private. Departure boards at Moscow's Domodedovo and Sheremetyevo airports showed dozens of cancellations on Sunday, including flights to Paris, Vienna, and Kaliningrad. Aeroflot, Russia's biggest airline, said it would cancel its services to Latvia and Romania until at least March 26th, and its Prague and Warsaw routes until March 28th. Airlines in Europe, England, and the United States are already announcing new, lengthier routes to comply with the ban. On Saturday, the United States, Canada, and several European countries, including Germany, agreed to remove selected Russian banks from the SWIFT payment system. The leaders of the European Commission, France, Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States issued a joint statement accusing Russia of unleashing forces and assaulting Kyiv. The coalition affirmed they are steadfast in their resolve to continue imposing costs on Russia that will further isolate the Eurasian nation from the international financial system and their economies, but didn't offer a specific date nor disclosed which Russian banks will be sanctioned. SWIFT is the world's main international payments network. Several countries have already expressed support for locking Russia out of the platform, and Germany, who had previously opposed the measure, conveyed its approval earlier on Saturday. The Western powers also announced plans to launch a transatlantic task force which will ensure sanctions on Russian entities remain effective. In light of the escalation of international sanctions, the Russian Federation announced that they plan to reciprocate and evaluate bilateral relations with those countries imposing measures on them. The Security Council's Vice President Dmitry Medvedev warned that sanctions against this country are an excellent occasion to revise bilateral relations and open the possibility of interrupting the talks and strategic stability. As proof of that, the Federal Air Transport Agency announced that since European countries closed on Saturday the passage of flights coming from Russia, mirror measures will be taken and Russian skies will be closed to them. Thus, only flights with special permission from the Federal Agency or the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs will be allowed to fly over their airspace. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. Hi, welcome back to From the South. On Sunday, the city of Brisbane in northeast Australia was hit by a severe storm accompanied by flash floods that left 7 people dead, as the authorities report so far. More than 1,400 homes in the capital of Queensland state were at risk of flooding. Over 28,000 homes experienced shortage of power statewide. Authorities requested about 700 people to evacuate from the city of Gympie on Saturday after the Mary River system surged beyond 22 meters in what is the town's worst flood since the 1880s. Meteorologists say the flooding and thunderstorms will continue throughout Monday, moving by then south to New South Wales, where some communities at risk in its northeast have also been told to evacuate. In Argentina, authorities were able to contain and reduce wildfires in the province of Corrientes by 70%, in part thanks to the recent rains. However, at least 4 fires remain active. According to the Emergency Operations Command, Palmar Grande, Loma Linda, Paraje Zapallo, and part of San Miguel are among the areas that still have active fires. Bruno Lovinson, Deputy Director of the Civil Defense, said they have the response teams, operational capacity, and the qualified personnel to carry on with the firefighting efforts, and that they estimate to have controlled all fires within the next 48 hours. Argentina's National Institute of Technology informed the flames have devastated nearly 10,000 square kilometers already. Communities in the Peruvian Amazon and coast have asked the United Nations for support to provide justice in the case of the ecological damage caused by the Repsol tanker's oil spill on January 15th, a disaster that will bear a decade-long effect on the area's ecosystem. Representatives of native communities from the jungle and the north coast in Peru sent a letter to the United Nations investigator on toxic substances and human rights, Marco Orellana, relating their experiences, requests, and concerns. Orellana is in Peru on an academic visit. In their letter, the residents demand liability not just from the companies involved, but also from the country's government. Fishermen and neighbors rightly claim that the spills in the area destroyed the fish banks and foiled the place for decades, depriving them of their source of income and making their people sick. In the claim to Orellana, the residents told him of the importance of conveying their message to Peruvian President Pedro Castillo and the international community. Thousands of colorfully dressed dancers and musicians kicked off carnival celebrations in the Bolivian city of Oruro on Saturday. Paraders said they were missing their traditional celebration after being canceled last year. Almost everyone in Oruro, a former mining center in western Bolivia, has a role, either as a dancer, a musician, a dressmaker, or a makeup artist. The event, one of Latin America's most famous, features around 20,000 dancers dressed in traditional costumes and musicians that parade across the streets of the city. The Carnival of Oruro attracts hundreds of visitors to Bolivia and it lasts throughout the weekend. This festivity is a United Nations World Heritage event.
We got this illness in one moment or another, thanks to the mom of the Socaban who has made us reborn. This is the strength that she gave us to heal. Maybe other siblings left, and in their memory, we dance and peregrinate today.
The government of Dominican Republic began the construction of a wall on its border with Haiti. Our correspondent in that nation, Daisy Toussaint, tells us the details.
In the Dominican Republic, the construction of a wall called the Intelligent Border Defense between the Dominican Republic and Haiti has formally begun.
We are committed to the construction of an intelligent border fence, a fence that will benefit both countries because it will allow for a much more efficient control of bilateral trade, regulate migratory flows to combat the mafias that traffic with people, and deal with drug trafficking and illegal arms sale.
There are 392 kilometers of borders between the two countries, but there are only 4 official border crossings: Elías Piña, Jimaní, Perdenales, and Dajabón. Most of them do not have dividing fences. In February 2021, the Dominican president announced the construction of the wall.
We will start building on the dividing line between the two countries, the Dominican Republic and Haiti. New security reinforcement measures that will combine physical and technological means, such as movement sensors, recognition cameras, and infrared systems.
The project presented integrates a physical fence with lighting system, command center, motion control and sensors, video surveillance cameras with infrared systems, as well as the infrastructure along the borderline.
The policy of building a wall on the Dominican-Haitian border by the government of President Abinader is more than a political mistake. It is an economical mistake and a social mistake. Both at the international level, the wall policy has been widely discussed, disputes, and discredited. On the economic level, let us remember that Haiti is the first commercial partner of the Dominican Republic, and any policy that does not be on good neighborliness, not only between states but also between peoples, will be an attack, an aggression to the coexistence, and development that precedes any prosperity and economic development.
In 2019, under the previous government's administration, the construction of a 2,000-meter-long fence started in Pedernales, but it was destroyed due to the overflowing of a river after the passage of the storm Laura in 2020. President Luis Abinader justified the building of the wall to stop irregular migration from Haiti. Some applaud this decision, and others understand that this wall is not only a physical construction, but that it builds rejection, intolerance, and exclusion.
Para TeleSUR, Daisy Toussaint, República Dominicana.
We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands of Shiites from across Iraq gathered in Baghdad on Saturday to mark the death of 8th century Imam Musa al-Qadim. The pilgrims traveling to the holy shrine of Imam Musa al-Qadim traditionally trek by foot to the twin-domed mosque in Kazimiya. The pilgrims are honoring Musa al-Qadim's life work, the 7th holy Imam for the Shiite worshippers who died in 799 AD. The religious leader's remains are kept in a mosque in the northern Baghdad neighborhood of Kazimiya, a mainly Shiite area. For such a large event, the Iraqi forces have taken strict security measures. Authorities have blocked most of the surrounding roads in fear of attacks against the pilgrims and issued a wide-scale deployment of agents in the area. Insurgents have staged attacks on Shiite worshippers during this religious occasion in the past. People in Syria are experiencing the worst living conditions in a decade due to the frequent power crisis and the high costs of batteries and generators. Power shortages in winter have intensified the suffering of many Syrians with power supplies in short supply around the country. Citizens have been going to cafes and other well-lit public spaces to work and study. The Syrian government said the power shortage stems from the lack of materials needed for electricity generating. Al-Zahir, the general manager of electricity, also blamed this predicament on U.S. sanctions. He is promising improvements by the end of 2022 with the help of states friendly to Syria. Chinese President Xi Jinping says his administration and the nation's Communist Party are committed to promoting human rights in the country. Chinese President Xi Jinping expressed the government's commitment to China's path on defense and promotion of human rights. The head of state mentioned the 6 main features of China's human rights development plan: upholding the party's leadership, respecting the people's main position stemming from national realities, upholding the rights to subsistence and development as a primary and basic human rights, safeguarding human rights in accordance to the law, and participating in global governance and human rights. The dignitary argued that whether or not human rights are upheld in a country cannot be judged by the criteria of those whose practices carry a double standard and exploit the issue of human rights as a political tool to interfere in other countries' internal affairs. Data from the United States Centers for Disease Control reveals that devastation from the coronavirus pandemic displays a huge disparity in the health care system that affects minorities, especially African and Latin Americans, who suffer a death rate far above that of white Anglo-Saxon U.S. citizens, with figures nearly twice as high. The New Roseland Community Hospital is located on Chicago's far south side. 95% of the area's inhabitants are African Americans. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, long queues formed around the block in order to access the hospital's testing facility, while patients swamped the center's 10-bed intensive care unit. According to Gil Jean, chief nursing officer of the hospital, they are the only safety net hospital the New Roseland community has, as a more contagious strain, Omicron, dramatically affected the hospital's staffing. We've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.